Okay, let's get started. Good evening, everybody. I hope your week has been off to a great start. We have received one regret for this evening from Director Goodwin. Directors Bottinger and Hashimi have not given regrets, however, they are not present this evening. We'd like to acknowledge that that Laurier Students Union is situated upon traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee people. Can I have a motion on the table to adopt the agenda as presented? All right, presented by Director Phillips, seconded by Vice Chair Phillips, seconded by Director Lafranciola. Do we have any objections? Do we have any abstentions? As I see none, the motion passes with unanimous consent. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Okay, as I see none, we move on to the approval of the meeting minutes from the May 11th board meeting. Can I have a motion on the table to approve the minutes from the May 11th board meeting? All right, forwarded by Vice Chair Phillips, seconded by Director Amasari. Do we have any objections? Any abstentions? No, perfect. So the motion passes with unanimous consent. On to the comments from the chair of the board and CGO, otherwise known as myself. So good evening, everybody. Hope the week has started off great. There's just a few things I'd like to talk about during my comments. Firstly, I'd like to talk about the confidentiality forms and confidentiality agreements, which all board members are supposed to sign. We still have some outstanding agreements, so please get them signed as soon as possible. It's very important to have those signed in order to be in full compliance with our policies. Secondly, we have some committee elections today. We'll talk about the importance of these committees, specifically the Ownership Linkage Committee. And I'd like to talk to Brantford directors specifically at this point. Just a reminder that in order to have your transportation budget approved, you have to come by me first. You cannot take transportation and then send me money or send me a receipt afterwards. That transportation has to be approved by me. Otherwise, you would stay in Brantford. We want to emphasize the multi-campus perspective of the Students Union. So stay in Brantford unless absolutely necessary. And I believe I have one more thing. Actually, nope, I think that's all I have. So onwards to the to the comments from the president and CEO, President Symington.
Thank you, Chair Del Giudice. Happy Monday, everybody. So we finally kind of ironed out our annual plan, and I actually kind of built out our schedule more so for the fall semester. That was actually today. So we've got kind of a better idea of what the year is going to look like in terms of when initiatives are actually going to take place. So it's good to see the ball rolling on that. Other than that, half of my VP team was at the Canadian Organization of Campus Activities, or the COCA conference, for the past 6 days. So while things are moving fast on one side, things are kind of in a lull on the other. But yeah, other than that, things are shaping up pretty good. And I'm looking forward to having my team back, I guess, tomorrow. And then things are also kind of complicated this week with convocation. But after that, hopefully things are nice and smooth sailing.
Okay, are there any questions for the president? As I see none, we'll move on to the comments from the executive director and CEO, Phil Champagne. So take it away, Phil.
Yep. We like to kind of build on what Shane said. We've kind of gone full systems go now in the middle of June, which is a little bit of a mind bend that we're already here. We did a leadership retreat where we took Shane and his team and all of their priorities, of which I believe there are 27, possibly 28, and kind of tried to pull those up into a high level annual plan that kind of fits within the mission, vision, guiding principles, and the ends of the organization. We'll be happy to present that vision document to you guys at the July meeting now that we kind of have a lot of meat on those bones. So we'll be happy to do that at the next board meeting for sure. And then at that point, it can be public to the membership. We also had the privilege of joining Ivan Joseph and his team, I want to say full team. His full team was invited. So everybody that works within the student affairs departments was invited. There was a large number of participants, but obviously it's very difficult to schedule for 70 some odd people. But it was excellent to be able to review the last 2 years and some of the challenges that the Department of Student Affairs has faced, and ultimately start to try to get on the same page with goals with the institution and moving forward into this new 22-23 academic school year. It's the first time that the student leadership has been invited to that particular event, so we were very pleased to be invited. And we will be working with Ivan and his team to kind of hopefully build on that throughout the year and the years to come. Other than that, I keynoted a welcome speech to the Campus Hospitalities Managers Association, basically trying to get them thinking about what's next now that we're aiming to be back on campus, how to engage students that really have no idea what the on-campus experience is like. The universities will have upwards of 75% of a new student body, and colleges will have upwards of 100% of a new student body. So how do they engage their students in new and meaningful ways to meet students where they are and both where they want to be? And that was okay. If I'm being honest, it wasn't great, but it was okay. But we are knee deep in vacation and conference season, so the rest of the summer will become very difficult scheduling wise. Shane and I also met with our partners in Aramark to talk about the future of Aramark on the Waterloo campus with regards to the food service that they provide. So there'll be a fresh food kind of update, mostly just paint and things of that nature. A lot of marketing updates inside the Terrace food court. There is an update that I can't provide right now because that's confidential, because it involves partners that have not been informed of anything. But we look forward to kind of working with Aramark to potentially bring a new idea to light, and bringing back the Golden Doe Pico, which was a huge success before the pandemic and was kind of slow throughout the pandemic. And we are also very happy that they're able to kind of go full bore into the catering season, as we also had the Friends of, it used to be called the Friends of Football. Now it's called the Laurier Legends Football Dinner or something to that effect, celebrating and fundraising money for the men's football program. I believe that's most of the news fit for print.
Okay, perfect. Are there any questions for the executive director and COO? Yes, Director Rashid.
Quick question. You mentioned that you had the meeting with student affairs. Are you able to discuss maybe at a later time what the overarching goals, what you meant by that?
So the university has some overarching goals for the institution and the direction that they want to head. I don't remember what those goals are off the top of my head, but I know that one of Ivan's priorities that ladders up to university priorities is equity, diversity, and inclusion in hiring. He had a major emphasis on how representation matters. What we can do, if the board wants to make a motion, we can definitely bring those goals to the July meeting and let you know. And he sent home the message that if the departments within student affairs, their individual goals don't ladder up to the student affairs goals, which don't ladder up to the institution's goals, then there's a subsequent fundamental failure in those goals. So he really tried to hammer home a lot of those points, but the major focus was on equity, diversity, and inclusion.
what will that mean for the relationship between the student union and the university?
Specifically nothing, other than we are able through the Student Affairs Advisory Agreement and subsequently the Student Affairs Advisory Committee or Council, depending on what you want to call it, can hold those groups accountable to those goals and do follow-ups. It's also, Dr. Ian Muller very acutely pointed out to me privately that that's a good opportunity for the board for later discussion on the agenda to think about inviting Ivan Joseph to come talk to the board and present those goals of his department.
That's a really good idea. Any chance that the discussion talked about the student experience side, or?
It was almost exclusive to the student experience, but the specifics are obviously very different. The Department of Student Affairs is incredibly varied. The Department of Residence sits in Student Affairs, Department of Athletics and Recreation, Accessible Learning, Career and Co-op, not so much co-op, but definitely career. So the experience for students within those departments is obviously going to be varied and different, but there still should be overarching goals that are attainable, and everybody is really focused on reinventing the on-campus experience now that students are going to be back on campus full throttle.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Are there any further questions? Okay, as I see none, we will go back to President Symington to talk about the 2022-2023 executive succession plan.
All right, yeah, so this is basically just a document that states if anything, heaven forbid, were to happen to me, that my successor is my VP of Financial and Volunteer Operations, Liam Chapin. Yeah, that's pretty brief. Phil?
A major part of the reason why we brought that up is because the president has requested a couple of days off in July, and we want to make sure that the board knows that when he's unable to fulfill his role as president, that there is a succession plan.
Vice Chair Phillips.
Thank you. I just wanted to check. Our next board meeting is tentatively set for July 11th. And I was wondering through you, Mr. Chair, to the president, whether or not that interferes with his planned time off.
I believe I'm set to get back on the 10th. So the answer would be no to that. Lucky though, cutting close.
Thank you.
Any further comments or questions? Okay, as I see none, we will go on to the board minutes and secretary update. So we'll circle back to Phil.
Sorry, just making sure I'm not muted. Yeah, so a couple of different updates. So the minutes, not really sure where we want to start. So the minutes from last year's board, of which there are many that are outstanding. We have approached last year's secretary to see if there's any interest or ability to be able to kind of circle back and finish those minutes. Unfortunately, Shreyas is unable and or uninterested in doing that. And just give me 2 seconds here. And so we need to kind of come up with a new plan for how we're going to deal with that. And I believe that the plan that we put forward involves for the interim, for the summer months, we're going to, like Ian Muller is going to help us take care to make sure that we don't get behind in this year's minutes while we're in the process of hiring the new board secretary, while we might also be in the process of hiring a second secretary whose specific duties will be to go back and to, for lack of a better term, transcribe those missing minutes so that we can get that to this board as soon as possible to get those approved and into the corporate records. We haven't posted the board secretary because our HR person, HR consultant, Shauna Y, has been away for a few different reasons, some of which are personal health related, but she is officially back to work as of today. And so we're hoping to post that ASAP. They were just reviewing the job description this afternoon. Am I missing anything, Doc?
No, Shauna said it would be out Friday, if not Friday, by Monday at the latest.
Vice Chair Phillips?
Have we decided whether or not we want / need a second secretary to go through the backlog? If not, when and how will that decision be made?
Good question. Based on the mass of minutes that are outstanding, it would seem to me to be mildly unreasonable to expect one person to be able to go back and handle that full load. So I think the best course of action would be to hire a second secretary whose specific responsibility is those backdated minutes. And as soon as that is done, their employment or their requirements and responsibilities would come to an end.
Okay.
We
We'll
just
have
allow
one-
them.
I was going to say it's possible that the hiring pool, when we post, could produce multiple candidates. One, you could offer the one position, one the other. That's would be a good first step.
I actually do have a question for the executive director. This may be a little bit too far in the future, but how would we go about hiring these secondary secretaries? Will we go through the same committee of hiring through not like a committee that way, or?
I think the easiest way to do it is to have the one committee, and hopefully there is a deep pool of candidates where we might be able to pick one or two folks from that pool of candidates and do it all in one foul swoop.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. So one last call. Director, Vice Chair Phillips, is your hand still up, or do you have a second question?
Yeah, I had a second question. This might be better for Ian or Phil. Is that hiring committee comprised of board members? I presume it is, or am I misinformed?
Yeah, it was formed at the end of the last meeting.
Okay, just wanted to correct. All right, thank you for reminding me. All good.
Okay, last caller. Any other questions or comments for the director, for the executive director and COO? Okay, so I see none. We'll move on to the Wolves refresh project. Once again, executive director and CEO Phil Champagne, take it away.
Guess who's back, everybody? So one of the things that we wanted to do with Wilfs is we've recognized that Wilfs hasn't really had any kind of a real refresh in the past 10 plus years. There was a number of years ago where there was a flood that kind of ultimately created in a pretty serious renovation of the space, but it's become mildly stale, and in an opportunity to grab a hold of the opportunity of all the students coming back, hopefully in some sort of a more normal way on the Waterloo campus. We wanted to kind of do an exercise with that group to identify a bunch of priorities that could help refresh that space and kind of bring new life to it, all the way from top of management, all the way to the customer base coming through the doors. They've also taken over the UDesk space on the first floor of the Fred Nichols Campus Center, specifically as the Wilfs takeout desk. Now that was something that we kind of did on an ad hoc basis during the pandemic, but now that the UDesk has officially moved up to the second floor of the FNCC, Wilfs will be taking over that on a more permanent basis. So they want to kind of take it over, redesign the space, and rebrand it. And so the exercise was originally to come up with what are your priorities in order to kind of create that refresh space. In an effort to kind of get the brief in on time for the board package, we put in a dollar figure of about $125,000. But having gone through the exercise with hospitality, it took us a long time to get the numbers together, which is why we didn't get them in on time. The priorities of the hospitality department are far more substantial than the original $125,000 that we put down. So we basically broke down there, I believe they had 33 things that they wanted to entertain in terms of being able to spruce up the space. Some of it was form and stylistic points, things as simple as, for example, painting the room and painting the ceiling, because anybody who's been in Guelph, if you'll remember, they have a really dark purple ceiling that really kind of closes and darkens the space. And one of the goals that that team has is to kind of lighten it up a little bit. So that's form. And then there's some functional stuff, like the kitchen has a lot of equipment that's on the verge of expiring, ovens. I believe there were a couple of ovens that they requested, and I believe a grill top that they requested, as well as some things for the front of house. So those are kind of the function side of things. So working with Chris Turner, who I had hoped would be a part of this meeting, but obviously through technical error, he is not able to attend. But we were able to, through the form and function, kind of what we need versus what would be nice to have, we were able to bring that down. So it's a little bit more than the $125,000 that we asked for, but I believe it ended up being about $175,000, which was down from about $350,000 at the start of the day. So of the 33 things listed through different means, there's a few things that we took off and we'll find funding another way to support. If the board approves this, we'll be able to knock off about 2/3 of that list to be able to ready to go, hopefully for the fall. I say hopefully largely because I have no idea what the supply chain is on some of those items, but hoping that 8 to 12 weeks would be more than enough time. Other than that, happy to field questions.
Okay, let's start off with Director Lafacciola.
Yeah, thank you for giving that little briefing, Dr. Champagne. I'm just curious as to in looking for these numbers and specifically for the product, how are we going about ensuring that we're getting the best deal in terms of making sure that we're being most responsible with the money, and then also
Yep.
How's that kind of being managed?
So in the process of going out for quotes, I mean, our team hasn't turned over in great many years. So they have a lot of trusted suppliers that they get the numbers from, but we also have trusted partners. So for example, one of the major budget pieces is a renewal of tables and chairs. You'll be surprised at how much furniture actually costs, especially where in restaurant business. I believe the total is close to $70,000 in furniture. So anyways, long story short, Aramark is also doing a furniture renewal of the fresh food company this summer. So we're going to try to see if we can kind of coordinate with them to get a better deal, because obviously Aramark has significantly better buying power than what the Students Union does. So we do have quotes from trusted suppliers. We do have quotes through our buying partners at the university, but also with Aramark. So there's a lot of different versions of that conversation through the varied items that are on that list. And through our operating procedures agreement, there are certain things that we don't get to quote out on. So for example, if the facilities asset management team, which is the people on campus that get things done, if they have the capacity to be able to paint our restaurant, they've got first right of refusal. So we have no choice but to go with their numbers. But if they recognize that their workload is too heavy, then they'll give us that opportunity and that freedom to be able to go and price that out. But that's not where they've done on that particular item.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Phillips.
I've got two brief questions. My first would be that it mentions that this $125,000 will be paid out of a cash surplus fund. I was just wondering kind of like where that money's come from, and
so that surplus is a result of last year's board. So I feel like you were on the board at this point, but when you guys approved the financial audited statements, there was a surplus. And so one of the things that I'd hoped to be able to present to this board today was a list of recommendations on how to spend that surplus. Unfortunately, there were a few variables that kind of came up at the last minute that didn't allow us to do that. So again, in the July meeting, we will have a more comprehensive list of what our operational recommendations for that surplus would be. But this was on that list for the original number of about 125. So we're asking to go up to $1.75.
Oh,
So that surplus is basically just through our operational year. Because COVID, we weren't able to spend what we had originally budgeted. There was a surplus as a result of that.
so I don't know if did I hear you incorrectly that you'd like to amend it from 125 to 175?
That's correct.
Okay. Secondary question and potentially a tertiary one. What were the other potential options for spending this surplus that you just?
So to be fair, the surplus is far more than the 175 that we're asking for. Like, we're talking upwards of $2 million.
Okay.
We are not prepared to bring that list forward at this point because of a few variables that kind of came up that needed to be adjusted. But we will be fully prepared to have that conversation in July, and will not spend a dime of it without talking to you guys first, because you guys have to approve it. So I can give you an example of some of the things that we had thought about recommending it to this group, if you'd like.
No, if that's, no, that was my second and third question, was about how much the fund was as well. So I think you've answered my questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, onwards to Director Rashid.
Yeah, just I was just a tag along question to Vice Chair Phillips's question about options. Just wondering if it would be part of the policy proposal package, the different options that you're going to be offering us in July, the potential to pay down some of the student union debt. I know that we have a line of credit.
That is on our list, yes.
Okay, perfect. The second part, I assume all of the spending is going to be in Waterloo, is that correct?
Of the surplus?
Yes.
Incorrect.
Oh, incorrect? Okay. Do you know what's Brantford specific spending you plan on doing here?
I do, but I'm not comfortable saying it in a
Okay.
public facing meeting at this point.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we tighten all the bolts before commenting. But we will be having a full discussion on this at the July meeting, I promise.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's all I wanted.
All right, thank you, Director Leclerc.
Yeah, just so I could wrap my head around this a little bit more. When it comes to construction and renovating spaces, a lot of the time it doesn't go to plan. There's a lot more costs that could be incurred over the course of renovation. In the event that this project would go over budget, I'm not sure if you could answer this right now, but where would we get that surplus of money?
So I'm just going to walk it backwards just a little bit, if that's okay. So there is no construction. We're not building anything. The closest thing that we have to that will have like the typical kind of construction renovation type work is the painting. Most of everything else is fairly superficial. So like if you go over to the UDesk space, which is going to become the Will's takeout space, most of that's going to be signage to let people know that it's not the UDesk anymore. It is in fact where you can order takeout food. And then there'll be so if you can remember the UDesk in Waterloo, in behind there was those two cabinets, directly behind that had a safe. So they want to remove that and just put shelving in. They want to remove where the tech share kind of components were, and again, put in some more open facing shelving, potentially some hot boxes, which will allow the food to stay warmer longer. But again, no construction is involved in any of that. So a lot of the concerns around the delays and the overages as a result of construction are not really a part of what we're talking about. Now, what we've done with what we're asking for, a lot of it is just items. And so we're able to kind of project manage that and make sure that all the things come in under budget. We've had two very significant construction projects over the last, time has kind of lost all meaning, but I'll go as far back as 4 years, going the turret renovation project as well as the 2-4 renovation project. I take budgets very, very seriously and do everything in my power to come in. Both of those projects, both comfortably north of $1 million, both came in under budget. And so we will be managing that project pretty closely to make sure that those numbers come in as close to on, if not under. And if it's going to go over and there is a surplus, to officially answer the question that you've actually asked, we would have to come back to the board and ask for more money.
Okay, thanks. I was just trying to wrap my head around everything, and I should have used renovations instead of construction.
No, you're good. You're good.
All right, thank you. Vice Chair Phillips.
I would like to make a motion to approve the Wills Refresh Capital Project Fund in the amount of $175,000.
Okay, is there a seconder? Director Leclerc. How did you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? All those in favor? All opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion passes with unanimous consent. So next up, we have the direct inspection committee elections. So everybody could please go to page 11 of the agenda package. Here you'll be able to see that it is our policy every 4 years to review specific policies to make sure that they are appropriate and up to date, ensure that the wording is sound, and ensure that the scope of the organization is captured within the policies. We have a schedule every 4 years to do this with specific policies that we do in the 4-year cycle. As for now, we will be conducting elections for EL2D and GP2D, otherwise known as the financial conditions and activities, and the chair job description. So in terms of the financial conditions and activities, this would basically set limitations on the president, and so that's EL number 2D, and GP number 2D would set limitations upon the chair of the board. In other words, myself. So essentially, 2D is outlining various restrictions in terms of funding, operational restrictions, the right to be informed, for the board to be informed, fiscal restraints such as budgets, expenditures, and in terms of 2D, this would ensure that I'd be up to my obligations of, constant communication with the board, acting as a linkage between the board and the president, and these kinds of things. So, are there any questions? Any points of clarification that are needed? Okay, so I see none. We can go into elections for EL2D. Do we have any nominations? Vice Chair Phillips.
A question first. How many directors do we need on each DIC?
Let me look that up real quick. Phil, do you know how many directors we need on each DIC?
I do not. I have not been fully paying attention. My apologies. I've been responding to a question that came to me while I was talking. But Ian, I want to say it's 4 usually, which includes the chair, who then at the first meeting would delegate to a new chair of that specific committee. Does that resonate,
Yes.
Doc?
Yes.
So 4, including the chair? I would like to nominate. Nicholas Lafarciola to the EL2D DIC.
Okay, Director Lafarciola, do you stand?
I stand.
Any further nominations?
I will nominate Director Murphy to the president's DIC. Sorry, I don't know the exact title.
Yep, no worries. We're right now focusing on EL2D, so that would be the president, the president's committee. Director Murphy, do you stand?
I stand.
Okay. Vice Chair Phillips, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I'll also nominate Director El Masri. Apologies if I pronounced that incorrectly.
Okay. Director, sorry, how do you pronounce your name?
It's El Masri, Director El Masri.
Dr. Al-Mashri, do you stand?
Yeah, I stand.
Okay, can I have a motion on the table? Oh, sorry, are there any further nominations? Okay, so I see none. Can I have a motion on the table to acclaim directors Laforchola, Murphy, and Amasari, and myself to EL number 2D, otherwise known as the Financial Conditions and Activities, DIC.
I will motion for that.
Okay, motion by Director Abu Rashid, seconded by Director Phillips. Would you like to speak to your motions?
Okay, I'm okay.
Any discussion on the matter? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? What I believe that the individuals running have to abstain. Am I correct?
Abstain.
Okay. So are there any abstentions? Director Abu Rashid, do you abstain?
Yes, I do. My apologies.
Okay, perfect. So the motion passes. I believe that's 7-0 to 4. So congratulations to the acclaimed directors, and I will send out a schedule for meeting whenever is at your earliest convenience. So next up, we have GP number 2D. This is the chair of the board and CGO oversight role. So I believe this also includes myself and for the directors, as mentioned previously. So do we have any nominations for this committee? All right, Vice Chair Phillips.
I'll nominate Director Nicholas. Apologies, Nicholas, for butchering your last name.
I stand, and it's better for you. It's all good.
Okay.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Director Laforchola,
I nominate Director Leclerc.
Director Leclerc, do you stand?
I do.
Okay. Any further nominations? I would like to nominate Director Dermott. Director Dermott, do you stand?
Yeah, I stand.
Okay. Are there any further nominations? Okay, I would like to nominate Vice Chair Phillips. Vice Chair Phillips, do you stand?
I believe we only need 3 directors, if I interpreted that correctly.
All right, yeah, that's my apologies. Yes. So can I have a motion on the table to, or can I have a motion on the table to acclaim directors Batifo, Directors Leclerc and Director Dermott, and myself to the Chair of the Board and Chief Governance Officer Role Committee, otherwise known as GP number 2D.
I'll motion.
Okay, motion by Director Abu Rashid and seconded by Director Phillips, Vice Chair Phillips. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Any opposed? And any abstentions? If you are acclaimed to the committee, please raise your hand for an abstention. All right, perfect. So the motion passes 7-0 to 4. And now we will go on to the ends direct inspection committee. So this is basically the committee where we determine the ends of the organization. So the ends are to have an affordable, accessible, and high quality academic experience, a safe, sustainable, and empowering environment, diverse and inclusive social interaction, and products and services that cater to the financial needs of students. So do I have any nominations for this committee? Vice Chair Phillips. You're muted, sir. There you go.
I will nominate Director Leclerc.
Director Leclerc, do you stand?
Yes.
Okay. Director Fachola.
I'll nominate Director Abu Rashad.
Director Abu Rashad, do you stand?
I'll stand.
Okay. Any further nominations? Phil or Ian, you can answer this. I believe this also has 4 directors, including myself, correct?
I think the ownership linkage has 4 plus you. I'm just trying to confirm, but I'm pretty sure the direct inspection committees have the 3. So I think we the same path as the previous 2.
Okay. So are there any other nominations? Okay, Vice Chair Phillips.
I will nominate myself and I will stand.
Okay, perfect. So can I have a motion on the table to, well, first of all, are there any further nominations? If so, we would go into elections. Okay, I see none. Can I have a motion on the table to acclaim Director Leclerc, Abu Rashid, and Phillips? Motion by Director Phillips, or is there a seconder?
I'll second.
Seconded by Director Murphy. Is there, and would either of you like to speak to your motions? Is there any discussion on the matter? All those in favor, please raise your hands. All those opposed? And abstentions? Okay, the motion passes 4-0 to 3. Next up, we have the Ownership Linkage Election Committee. This is the committee I really want to emphasize tonight. As many of you know, many people on campus have not experienced a full year of, Director Rashid, do you have any further questions or comments?
My apologies. My hand was left over from the abstention.
No worries. So we, as a school, have had approximately 75% of active students who have not had a normal year on campus. And so this year, the Ownership Linkage Committee will be extremely important in reaching out to students, educating them about the board, educating them about how they can get involved, and all that awesome stuff that this committee does. It's also my personal favorite committee. So I highly recommend anybody to join this committee. It's a great experience. So I'll just go through the products that this committee delivers. So it would be a schedule to ensure two-way consistent communication with members, implementation of a plan to include all directors. So this would be basically getting a plan to get boots on the ground, seeing to get out and engage with students. A budget that does not unnecessarily burden the organization, pretty self-explanatory. We don't want to spend too much that would be out of our means. A focus on engagement, transparency, and feedback. And finally, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely goals to engage with the student body or the ownership. So this membership shall include of myself and 4 other members of the board, 1 spot reserved for the Brantford directors. So do I have any nominations on the table?
I'd like to nominate myself as a Brantford director.
Okay, and I'm assuming you stand.
Yes.
Okay, Vice Chair Phillips.
I will nominate Director Lafortiola.
Director Lafortiola, please stand.
I stand. Yeah.
Okay. Any further nominations? Okay, Director Murphy.
I'd like to nominate myself, and I stand.
Perfect. Any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Director Leclerc. Oh, oh,
Okay,
no.
Director Leclerc, do you stand? Is
How many?
Leclerc with us? Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm here. My video camera sometimes shuts off for some reason on my laptop. How many directors are we at currently nominated for this position?
Currently, we're at 3, and I believe we need one more.
Need one more.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I'll stand.
Okay. Can I have a motion on the table to, or are there any further nominations? If so, we go to elections. As I see none, can I have a motion on the table to acclaim Director Abu Rashid, Director Lafarchola, Director, Director Phillips, do you have a question, or is that just the,
No, sorry, I was preemptively motioning.
okay, so Director Abu Rashid, Director Lafarchola, Director Murphy, and Director Leclerc. Motion by Director Phillips. Any seconders? Vice Chair Phillips, my apologies. Seconded by Director Abu Rashid. Do you either of you, would either of you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? All those in favor? Please raise your hand if you're in favor. Okay, all those opposed? And abstentions. Okay, so the motion passes 3-0 to 4.
Just a question about that. Are we required to have a majority vote, or how does it work when we have 9 of us here and 3 who are voted for? Does that?
So the abstentions count towards quorum, but they don't negate the positive vote.
Okay.
They make it legitimate, but they don't detract against the positive votes, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you.
Director Phillips, Vice Chair Phillips, do you have a question or comment?
I just had a quick clarifying question for you, Mr. Chair. How did we run voting procedures last semester or last year on the board? I think there was a way we did it slightly differently than how we are doing it, but I can't remember what that was.
Roll call.
Director Champagne?
Yeah, it used to be roll call. They would just kind of go through, Andrew, as the chair, would go through a list of board members and register their vote. And then correct me if I'm wrong, about 2/3 of the way through the year, the board thought that was a little too cumbersome and slow. And so they decided to kind of speed it up the way that, not too dissimilar from the way the chair, Doug Duce, is doing it.
Yeah, if the board does wish to proceed in the way that we did before, we would have to go through motions, and we would have to approve it for the next meeting. So if that's something that the board wants to do, that is something that we can offer up for discussion, perhaps at a later meeting. So now we're on to the annual governance planning. So this is where we talk about our plans for the summer and the upcoming year. So I'm very happy that we struck up all those committees today. Very good that we got them ready for the summer. By next meeting, I do plan to meet with Chris Turner to discuss the budget and our current financial position and how the board can help fit into that. And also, hopefully you can give a short presentation on how the finance committee works, to see if any of you are interested in it. It is famously one of the previous Chair Dang's favorite committees for some reason. I still don't know why, but It is a very interesting committee to say the least, and I highly encourage everyone to go on it. Next up, we have board EDI training. I made a decision that this should happen during the school year. This way we can coordinate everyone's schedules in a better way, because right now I understand people are working, people have school. It's a bit difficult to form schedules that way, but this is upon request from the previous board to engage in EDI training. So this will happen in the fall term, and later in the year, later in the semester, spring semester, possibly in August, we'll come up with a comprehensive schedule to determine when we can have this training. Next up is the ownership linkage for the spring. So if anybody has any ideas, whether you're on the ownership linkage committee or not, please speak up, reach out. Have any ideas to engage in the, with the ownership? That's always greatly appreciated. And finally, I'd like to mention that if directors would like to invite any speakers who they believe would offer an alternative perspective on an issue, or who could offer great education to the board on certain issues, please feel free to reach out to me and we can set that up. I will be reaching out to directors to come up with a comprehensive schedule for the term, so that this way we can get things set in motion for the summer. This is just a draft right now. So we'll go into questions, comments. I'll start off with Vice Chair Phillips.
So I wanted to bring forward two ideas that were presented to myself and the chair. So one being from Director Lafarciola. You know what, actually, I'll let you speak to that. I'll let you guys, you and Director Abu-Rashid speak to that if you would like. You had a separate idea that Director Abu-Rashid.
Yeah, sorry, are you referring to the message that I'm unclear of what you're referring to?
That's right. So Director Lafarciola suggested that we update the Students' Union website with headshots of the new board members, as well as introducing us to the student body in some capacity, whether that's through a newsletter. Just was an idea that he said I wanted to help bring forward to everybody. And in terms of a philanthropy kind of idea, Director Abu-Rashid had suggested a potential board blood drive in the fall or whenever, to kind of bring light to the board as a public entity, to the ownership, and generally do a good thing. Just wanted to put those out there.
If I could speak to the idea a little bit more to the board, if that's okay.
Yep, go ahead.
So the idea would be to either target this at the end of August or beginning to mid-September. The point of this would be to not only for willing and able board of director members to go donate blood, but to encourage students to go to come with us. It's typically something that I've noticed that large corporations and even some of the athletics teams within Laurier does, and it's one of the things that they help to help bring their name out there, and it's good for our society. So I think that it would be a really good idea to reach out. I think I know the manager that deals with groups at the Waterloo Blood Clinic. So if this is something that the board is interested in exploring further, I'd be more than happy to discuss this further at length with the person I know.
Okay, thank you very much. I really like that idea. I think it's great. We can definitely get that in the works as soon as possible. Director Lafarciola, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, just I was wondering if I could comment on the idea, on my idea, from what. Yeah. Okay. Well, first off, just thank you for for bringing that up, Vice Chair Phillips, and of course, Director Abu Rashad for bringing your idea as well. I just wanted to bring, point of clarification to my idea, and in terms of getting the headshots ready, and maybe a discussion that we can add onto another agenda or something like that. But I think it'd be really great to kind of have, a unified look for our board, and potentially look into making some kind of headshots that look similar and are professional, of course, so we can kind of get those pictures ready for the beginning of the year and kind of use them as needed throughout the year. I think that'd be a really great opportunity for us to kind of engage a lot with the community. I'm just not sure what the best method to kind of discuss our, I guess, initiating this venture, or kind of getting, putting forth this idea. Would it be putting it into an agenda for our next meeting, or kind of how do these discussions happen?
So actually what's normally happened and what would have happened pre-pandemic is that our marketing communications department facilitates headshots, uniform headshots, so that you all have the same headshots. Essentially, we have your campaign shots up right now, just so that there is something in the interim. But that's definitely something that our Director of Marketing Communications touched base with me today, just to make sure that you are aware that that's something that department can facilitate, and make sure that the website is up to date with a headshot of your choosing, whether it's something that you want to do yourself or whether you want us to do them. We can make sure that they are uniform in nature and professional in appearance.
Okay, Director Lafachoa, once again, very, very nice idea. I think it's great if we get some updated uniform headshots on there. We can probably talk about the exact logistics of that by next meeting. But yeah, just some great ideas on the table. Very glad to hear them. So
I would like to speak to Director Lafachoa's suggestion.
sure, go ahead.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I think that we could probably make use it as part of like a comm strategy to not only like release the headshots, but then also like have it as part of like an introduction, like maybe like, as you mentioned, maybe like a newsletter to kind of like, then it would be putting words to faces, and then so that people would be able to know who we are and what we do.
Executive Director Champagne.
I don't fully know the logistics of all of this, but I feel as though in years past, maybe even specifically last year, there was Instagram introductions of, so like we coordinate and ask kind of fun, clever questions to try to get to know the directors on a personal level as opposed to the professional level. Because at the end of the day, you guys are all still students, right? And it's important that we get to see that side of you. And that's also coordinated through the marketing department typically. So we can definitely have a conversation with the marketing department being led by Megan LeCourcier and have her put forward a recommendation on how to achieve all of the things for you guys. And if you want, you could make a motion to invite her as a guest to the next board meeting. Hashtag Ian, don't tell her I said that.
Can I tell her?
Yeah, so all great ideas. I think social media engagement is a great way to connect with students. I think specifically, we'll get to that after. President Sumington.
I'm gonna have a terrible idea, but that just depends on how much you like puns. This is one I thought of towards the very end of last year. But if you wanted to kind of have like an event that also like kind of like could be integrated with like an info kind of thing in terms of educating people on what exactly the board does, you could have like a board game social. I'm surprised I got a good look from Phil. Actually, no, Phil, you kind of like my puns.
I'm very punny. I enjoy a good pun.
Yeah, so that's just an idea. You guys can follow through with that if you like.
Well, I personally love it. I don't know what the rest of the board is thinking, but I think it's great. So yeah, I think another avenue we can take is starting up a TikTok account. It worked for nearly all departments who did it in previous years. Just students union in general, low rate votes. It worked really well to get the vote out. Students love TikTok, so I think it's a great way to get ourselves out there, jump on trends, things like that. Yes. Phil, go ahead.
One of the things that's part of Shane's priorities and portfolio coming in was content creators as a student position. And so literally as we speak, the marketing department is in the process of hiring a promotions manager that will likely oversee student positions of those content creators. So if and when that thing comes to fruition, I'm sure there'd be some people operational that would be able to help the board execute that vision.
Okay, just one more question to Phil. You mentioned that there was somebody we could invite to the board to talk about specific avenues we can take.
Yep. So the board has the ability to invite essentially anybody and everybody that they want to. So historically, comfortably in the before times, we would usually get a visit from the president of the university. We've had the vice president of finance for the university come and see us in a private chat with a director tonight. Talked about potentially inviting Ivan Joseph to come and talk about what his department's goals are with regards to the student experience. There's been a lot of discussion about the affordability of education, etc. So there's an opportunity to talk about the VP academic and provost, to bring him in and his team and talk about their priorities for academic affordability. For the record, the VP academic and provost oversees the budget of the university, because a vast majority of the budget for the university lies in the academic side of the house, just so you know. So the VP finance helps facilitate it, but it's led by the VP academics office. So there's lots of opportunity there. We used to invite mayors. There's opportunity to invite members of parliament, provincial parliament, city councilors, Indigenous leaders, EDI leaders. Like, the world is quite literally your oyster in this regard. Now, traditionally, the schedule, doing things late at night has hindered that. But given that in the summer, there's lots of opportunity, 6 o'clock is a pretty reasonable time. And then hopefully in the fall, when we get back, we can have a very similar time where we can kind of invite a world of guests to our doorstep to answer your questions on the impact of students. Mohammed and I have been going back and forth about the financial position of the university and affordability for students, which will be probably a high priority spotlight issue for the years to come. You can invite housing experts, you name it.
Yep, those are all great ideas. I really like the idea of having Ivan Joseph come in. He came in last year to talk about some really interesting things. I would love to have him back. Vice Chair Phillips, do you have any questions or comments?
It is slightly unrelated, but I'm looking at GP2H, right? It is related, but just unrelated to your last comment. I was wondering if potentially, probably sounds like an Ian question, if Ian would be able to clarify the scheduling on the last page of the agenda package. I'm just confused which year of the 4-year DIC cycle we're in. So I see EL2D and GP2D in 2 different years. And then I have a secondary question after that. Sorry to put you on the spot, Ian, if you also do not have the answer.
No, I know the ends was missed. We're in year 1. The ends was missed last year. So it's EL2D and it should be GP2B, but it's possible that there was a typo. Yeah.
Okay. So should the GP2D direct inspection committee be monitoring, or okay, inspecting 2B?
Yeah,
instead?
it should be GP2B, not D. And then the reason why we're doing the ends is because it didn't get reached last year during year 4. So we're year 1, the first ones that are EL2D, and then that's just a typo. It should be GP2B. So good catch there.
My secondary follow-up question was, when do we need to schedule these DICs by? Would that be when we put up together the schedule for the year?
So if you actually look through the board manual that was provided in the month-to-month schedule, those are kind of scheduled in throughout the year so that the DICs are spread out over the course of the year. Just for directors who aren't aware, the DIC committees are just short-term commitments. You basically meet once, usually once, to review and provide recommendations for any options. So it's a very short time commitment, being that they're structured a number of times per year. But if you flip through that board manual, which has our board calendar, so the kind of month-to-month responsibilities, you'll see that the various DICs are scheduled in throughout the 12-month period.
All right. Thank you. That's all my questions.
Okay. This is just a side note. Last year when we were determining new processes for governance structure and voting processes, the board made it very clear that cameras were very important. So, just for transparency purposes, if you can, please turn your camera on. It's very important, especially for in-camera sessions. With that being said, can I please have a motion on the table that the board of directors proceed to our in-camera session?
I'll motion.
Motion by Director Abu Rashid and seconded by Director Phillips. Would either of you like to speak to your motions? Any discussion on the matter? All those in favor? All those opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so the motion passes with unanimous consent, 6-0 to 0.